I overheard my fiancé bragging, "She's just an investment until I find someone better." His friends laughed. I played along, then vanished on our wedding day. This morning, his cousin texted me, "He's losing it. Please answer." I never expected to overhear the conversation that would shatter everything I believed about my relationship. It happened by accident, or maybe fate had decided I deserved the truth. I had come home early from a work event, quietly stepping into the house while Ryan, my fiancé, was laughing with his friends in the living room. I had no intention of eavesdropping, but then I heard my name. "Samantha?" "She's just a temporary comfort," Ryan said, his voice dripping with amusement. "She's useful for now, but once I'm in a better position, I'll find someone more impressive." The word struck me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat as I pressed my back against the hallway wall, heart hammering. My small business, a boutique bakery I had poured my soul into, had always been something I thought Ryan supported. Yet, as he and his friends continued talking, I learned just how little he respected me. "She works herself to the bone, thinking it's going to build something meaningful," he scoffed. "It's cute, honestly. But let's be real. I need someone who can actually bring something to the table, not just a passion project and a dream." Laughter erupted. My hands clenched into fists. I felt sick. Confronting him then, and there would have been my instinct, but I held back. Exploding with anger would only give him the chance to lie, twist things, and manipulate me into believing I had misunderstood. Instead, I needed proof. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I set up a hidden recorder on my phone, ensuring it would capture every careless word he spoke. I started checking our shared bank accounts, meticulously going through transactions. And then I began saving messages. His flirtations with other women, his dismissive remarks about my contributions, and even texts to his friends joking about how I'd be footing the bill until he found a better option. The final confirmation of his true nature came 2 weeks later at his best friend's party. I was sitting nearby, pretending to scroll through my phone while Ryan talked loudly to a group of guys. I heard my name again, and my stomach tightened. "She actually sold her jewelry to help with the house down payment," he bragged, shaking his head. "Can you believe that? So damn eager to prove she's all in. It's perfect, though. I won't even have to spend a dime of my own money until I'm ready to move on." A pit of fury burned inside me. The engagement ring on my finger suddenly felt like a joke, a symbol of manipulation rather than love. And then, as if his betrayal wasn't enough, I watched him lean in closer to a woman standing next to him, his fingers brushing against her arm as he whispered something in her ear. She laughed. That was the moment I knew. There was no future with this man. But I wouldn't just walk away. He had played me like a fool, but I would make sure he paid the price. I wasn't alone in seeing through Ryan's lies. His cousin, Lily, reached out to me one night, her tone hesitant, but filled with concern. "Samantha, I don't know if I should be saying this," she admitted, "but Ryan, he has a pattern. You're not the first woman he's used like this. And I don't want to see you get hurt the way the others did." Her words confirmed what I had feared. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was who Ryan was. A few days later, Jason, one of Ryan's longtime friends, sent me a message. "Look, I know we don't talk much, but I've seen the way Ryan talks about you when you're not around. It's not right. He's planning something, and you deserve to know." Between Lily and Jason, I had more validation than I ever needed. Ryan wasn't just selfish, he was a serial manipulator. With the truth fully exposed, my next move was clear. I needed to protect myself. I started by moving my savings into a separate account. Every dollar I had contributed to our wedding planning, I made sure it was either refunded or redirected to accounts under my name only. Then, I checked our shared expenses and found multiple suspicious charges Ryan had made using my card, expensive dinners I had never attended, luxury purchases I hadn't approved. I disputed every single one. The best part? I made sure that every remaining financial responsibility for the wedding would fall on him. I wasn't just going to leave him. I was going to make sure that when I did, he'd be the one left drowning. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt surreal. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Ryan was still his charming self, obsessed with the wedding plans and pushing for a lavish ceremony. He was busy coordinating with the venue and the caterers, making decisions that seemed to have no end. To the outside world, we were the picture-perfect couple, an unstoppable team about to make the ultimate commitment to each other. But beneath that facade, I was nothing but a woman who had seen through his lies, and I wasn't about to play the role of the devoted fiancé much longer. Ryan had no idea that I was growing increasingly aware of his true intentions. He continued to push for an extravagant wedding, as though everything was proceeding according to his plan. His greed remained hidden behind his charm, the same charm he used to keep me under his control. I smiled, nodded, and acted like I was still invested in making our big day perfect. But every time I gave in to his demands, each decision I made for the wedding felt like another nail in the coffin of our doomed relationship. In my mind, the wedding was never going to happen. It was a carefully constructed illusion, a trap that would set him up for the ultimate humiliation. But for now, I had to keep playing along. I needed to bide my time and set everything in motion. One evening, as I cleaned up after dinner, I noticed something strange. Ryan had left his journal on the kitchen counter, the leather-bound book slightly open, as if it were waiting to be read. He always prided himself on keeping his thoughts private, but that night, I couldn't resist. My curiosity got the best of me. I picked it up, glancing over the first few pages, but the more I read, the more the world around me began to fade. There, in black and white, was everything I had feared and more. Ryan had been meticulously planning our entire relationship. He had a financial strategy laid out that involved using me for as long as it benefited him. He intended to marry me, secure the financial stability he needed through our marriage, and then, once he had what he wanted, he'd move on to someone wealthier and more impressive. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest as I read his plans for after the wedding, how he had already decided that I was just a stepping stone in his quest for a more affluent future. The shock of his betrayal hit me in waves. All those years of building a life together, supporting his ambitions, believing that I had a partner who cared about me, they were nothing but illusions. I had been a means to an end. He had never truly loved me. His journal revealed everything, his cold, calculating nature, and how he had been toying with my emotions from the very start. It wasn't just a financial plan, it was a roadmap for his deceit. But now, with the truth laid bare before me, I knew I couldn't stay. The only question that remained was how to bring everything crashing down without giving him the satisfaction of knowing how much I'd uncovered. My plan had to be precise, deliberate, and executed without hesitation. I began shifting the wedding expenses to his name. It started small, redirecting bills for the florist, the catering, and the venue deposits. At first, it didn't feel like much, but it was all building toward a bigger, final moment. The day Ryan had been counting on to secure his financial future would be the day he would lose everything. He'd be left with debt, public humiliation, and no one to blame but himself. Over the following days, I methodically worked through our finances, ensuring every dollar he had access to was either hidden, protected, or moved into an account that was solely mine. I began collecting all the evidence I had gathered over the past weeks, recordings, messages, and the journal. Every piece of information was organized and ready to be used at the right time. It was all coming together. Despite the steely resolve I had in my mind, my heart sometimes faltered. I couldn't help but remember the moments before the truth came crashing down, the good times we shared, the trips, the late-night talks, the idea that maybe this could work. But no matter how painful it was to let go of the dream, I knew I had no choice. He had already given up on me. Now it was my turn to let go of him, and I had to do it in the most calculated, strategic way possible. As the wedding day approached, my preparations took on a more urgent, final edge. I meticulously crafted the plan to disappear. I knew I had to slip away quietly without raising suspicion. A confrontation would give him the chance to manipulate me, to try to turn things around. I had to be one step ahead. The idea was simple: make my exit before the ceremony began, leaving him at the altar with nothing but the weight of his own deceit. There would be no dramatic speeches, no tear-filled confrontations. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing I was hurt. I was going to leave, and he would have to deal with the mess I was about to leave behind. I packed a bag, making sure everything was in place: passport, credit cards, and a few essentials. The note I left behind was short, cold, and to the point. I wasn't going to waste my time with explanations. He'd already had all the answers, laid out in the journal and in the evidence I'd gathered. All I had to do now was disappear. The morning of the wedding arrived, and I made my way to the venue under the guise of excitement. Ryan was already there, caught up in last-minute details, unaware that I was planning my exit. I sent him a final, innocent text message, telling him I couldn't wait to see him at the altar. I wanted him to think everything was going according to his plan. As I walked out of the venue to make my final preparations, I felt a calmness wash over me. This was it, the end of the game. By the time Ryan reached the altar, the stage was set. He was waiting for me, texting me to hurry up, wondering where I was. But the longer he waited, the more confusion spread through the guests. The minutes turned to hours, and still, I didn't appear. His panic grew, his questions unanswered. By then, I had already gone, leaving him to wrestle with the consequences of his own actions. I had successfully orchestrated the perfect trap. Ryan's dreams of a lavish wedding were dashed, his financial plans for the future were ruined, and he would now face the fallout of his own betrayal. The game was over, and I was finally free. In the days following my disappearance on what was supposed to be our wedding day, I made a decision that signified the final severing of all ties with Ryan. I quietly removed my engagement ring, the one he had placed on my finger with such apparent sincerity. But now, it wasn't a symbol of love. It was a reminder of the manipulation, the lies, and the cruel game he had played with my heart. As I slid the ring off, I felt the weight of it lifting off my spirit, leaving behind only freedom. It wasn't just the removal of a piece of jewelry. It was the end of an era, a line drawn in the sand that I would never cross again. With the ring gone, I turned my attention to the most important part of my plan: exposing Ryan for the man he truly was. Over the past weeks, I had amassed a mountain of evidence, recordings of his deceitful conversations, text messages mocking me, and detailed photos and receipts documenting his financial scheming. But simply keeping it all hidden wasn't enough. I needed to make sure that Ryan faced the consequences of his actions, and for that, I would need to make the truth undeniable. I compiled everything into a single, undeniable video, a damning exposé of Ryan's betrayal. Each clip, each message, each photo painted a portrait of a man who had used me for his own gain, a man who saw me as nothing more than a temporary stepping stone. With a steady hand, I sent that video to everyone who had once been part of our shared life, our families, our friends, and anyone who had been under his spell. I wasn't doing this to seek sympathy. I was doing it to ensure that everyone who mattered knew who he truly was. And as for Ryan, he would have to live with the consequences of the life he had tried so hard to build on lies. The immediate reaction from Ryan was nothing short of explosive. When he first saw the video, his face contorted in a mixture of disbelief and seething rage. He had no idea that I had known everything, let alone that I had gathered enough evidence to shatter his carefully constructed facade. He immediately tried to deny the claims, to spin the narrative in his favor, but that's when Jason, his own friend, stepped forward. Jason's voice was calm but firm as he confirmed every single word I had said. "It's all true," Jason said. "Ryan's been like this for years. He doesn't care about anyone but himself." And with that, Ryan's world began to unravel. The shock rippled through our social circle like a tidal wave. His family, once so supportive of our relationship, began to question everything. Ryan's carefully cultivated reputation as a charming, successful man crumbled in front of them, and no one was more shocked than the people who had stood by him for so long. One by one, people began to leave the venue, no longer willing to be part of the farce of a wedding that had turned into a public spectacle. The party that was supposed to celebrate our future together instead became a chaotic scene of confusion and discomfort. People whispered, exchanged looks, and began to quietly exit. Even the caterers were packing up early. Ryan had gone from groom to pariah in the span of a few hours. But Ryan wasn't done yet. His ego and sense of entitlement couldn't allow him to accept the truth gracefully. He bombarded me with a flurry of angry messages, calling me every name in the book. He threatened to destroy my reputation, to lie about me, to paint me as the one who had manipulated him all along. But no matter what he said, no matter how hard he tried to twist the narrative, I had the upper hand. His threats were empty. The evidence was irrefutable. And deep down, he knew it. The wedding reception, which was supposed to be a celebration of our union, had turned into a bizarre celebration of my newfound freedom. Guests who had been part of Ryan's inner circle were now gossiping among themselves, swapping stories of his past manipulations. They sipped champagne and laughed, not in joy for me, but at the grand spectacle of his downfall. The lavish food and drink that had been meant for a wedding feast became the backdrop for the fallout of a man who thought he could control the world. Ryan's breakdown was inevitable. Unable to handle the weight of his public humiliation, he showed up at my door, desperate to explain himself. His face was red with anger, his hands shaking as he pleaded with me to hear him out. He begged for forgiveness, claiming that I had misunderstood him, that I had misinterpreted everything. But the footage of his meltdown, the raw, emotional collapse of a man who had lost everything, was already circulating among our mutual friends. The camera caught every word, every gesture of his unraveling, and soon, his reputation as a manipulative, entitled individual was cemented in the minds of everyone who had once admired him. As the days passed, the final pieces of the puzzle were set into place. I made sure that all the evidence I had collected, every message, every photo, every recording was shared. I wanted Ryan's betrayal to be known in its entirety. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. He had been exposed for the opportunistic, manipulative man he truly was. There was no way to undo it. No amount of pleading or threats could erase the truth that had been laid bare. Ryan's life began to spiral out of control. His professional connections, which he had built on his charm and manipulation, began to crumble. Word of his deceit spread like wildfire, and the people he had once relied on for support no longer wanted anything to do with him. His family, too, began to distance themselves, unable to ignore the truth about his character any longer. The walls he had so carefully constructed around himself had come crashing down, and all that was left was the wreckage of his lies. In the end, Ryan faced the full consequences of his actions: public humiliation, financial ruin, and the destruction of every relationship he had once held dear. And I, for the first time in years, felt a sense of peace. I had severed the last ties to a man who had tried to use me. I was free. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. The journey had been painful, but in the end, it was worth it. I was ready to move forward, no longer weighed down by the manipulation and betrayal that had once consumed me. The world was mine to conquer, and I was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. Justice had been served. And now my story was just beginning.